realize China and Russia, their spies, are listening to you. Throw it away. Yeah. No more tweeting and whatever you're doing. They're listening into your conversations.
Let me ask you a question. Which president in the history of presidents that you know, that you can remember, not dating back before your time, that you can say that we couldn't say anything bad about him, really?
Well, you know, I had a good fortune through a friend of mine, he became a friend of mine. He was my dad's friend from the Korea War. They met while they were waiting to be, shipped back to the U.S. and get discharged. James Gardner, remember the Rockford Files and all that, support the local sheriff? He was my dad's friend, and a very good friend. He would come up as I was growing up, to our house every summer and spend a week with my dad, and they would go out and do whatever guys do. But, I was really infatuated with Ronald Reagan. And, I was a young kid, kind of. And, and next thing I know, I get a phone call from the White House because, James Gardner knew Ronald Reagan. They were friends. And at that time, Ronald Reagan every month would have a radio show that, for young people to call in and ask the president questions about, the country or whatever. And he would try to answer them. It was like a talk show with the president And
oh, wow.
I didn't have to call in. He called me up, and it shocked me. And we had a little conversation. And then after that show, about a week later, he calls me up out of the blue, and we chew the fat. It's like you would, I asked him how he got into being a movie star. He explained to me he was in radio first and did all this stuff and, worked his way up and how he was found and all that stuff. But you know what? I got to know him enough that Star Wars... a lot of people would talk about, that it was pretty much a defense between us and Russia. But, during the conversation, I asked him about that, and he didn't elaborate because, his phone was being recorded. Yeah, but he kept using the word out there.
Yeah.
In the conversation. I said, is this, protect us against, missiles coming like from Russia? And he goes, no, from out there.
Right. Yeah, that's what I always thought too. When the famous speech he gave, remember, in the somewhere in the 80s, 85, 86 or something. He was talking about something. I can't remember how it went, but it was pretty much touched. That's what was the meaning behind it, or the hidden meaning was. Out there, from out there.
Yeah, from aliens, basically. You have to understand, too, him and Nancy, especially Nancy, was really into the occult. And a lot of the decisions, and now this came out after, he was out of office, but a lot of his decisions were made, by mystic, the occult, by, the stars and how that ever is done. That's a lot of his decisions were based on, that.
Oh, yeah, because Nancy, she was big into astrology, and I don't think she made a move. Once she got out of bed, it was all about that to direct her day.
Oh, yeah, and his, too. I hate to say it.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what I was just thinking, Gary? Today marks the 30th year anniversary that I stumbled upon that barbecue.
30 years. And you know what? You didn't get anything out of it. Or they didn't get... The best news is they didn't get anything from you.
The best news is they didn't catch me, invading their barbecue.
Yeah, well, you could have... Your penis could have been hanging from a tree, branch.
Lord.
And
I think about that all the time. That was something else.
Well,
wow.
Yeah, a little bit about it, folks. What he was doing, he was out where he shouldn't be. He ran into a cult, and they were, going around the fire doing what, occults do, or covens do. And they had a goat there. And I was warning him when he was telling me the story is they might have had a double. They could have done something different. They could have actually figured, okay, instead of sacrificing the goat for whatever they were going to do, we'll sacrifice James instead, and we'll barbecue the goat, and we'll have goat burgers.
Yeah, because here's the kicker of that whole story. I didn't know it at the time, but it was in Rhode Island, near where the Perrin farm was, and out there. And at that time in New England, there was an actual cult. They were, kidnapping prostitutes and runaways, and they were murdering them. And they didn't link it up at the time, and I didn't know nothing about this till years later. And I was like, Lord, what? Who knows what I could have stumbled upon? But I slowly backed out there as quick as I seen it.
Well,
near midnight. That was a train wreck waiting to happen.
Well, it would have ended your career in ghost hunting and being a medium. I'll tell you that.
I probably could have been a ghost. I've been floating around the woods over there forever. Jeez. Wow.
Well, that's, when you get out in certain areas like that, you're really risking yourself because the culture of the groups of the people are different than, so, I mean, by daylight, you've seen some of these, flick movies, sci-fi movies, horror movies. You pull up to a gas station, the guy only wants to sell you a gallon and a half of gas, knowing that's enough to get you nowhere. Yeah. So you're stuck out in the middle, or you're driving, and all of a sudden you go back in time, and here's this old, town like from 1859 or something like that, and you kind of walk into it, and you're trapped into it. I mean, I still think
you're right.
I still think stuff like that could happen. You could go into a portal. Like Samantha, we were talking about portals a little bit. How do you know that some of these people end up missing because there's been so many of them going in the forest system, or not even in the forest system, it disappeared. People who just got in their car, right, and told their boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, or wife, I'm going just for a ride, or I'm going to go get a pack of cigars, and never come back, and they never find the car, they never find him.
Never come back. There's several cases. The Bennington Triangle over, I think it's Vermont or New Hampshire. There's been people where they just go off on a hike and never come back, never found, never nothing. I was watching a show yesterday about it, and I was thinking of you because the one report was there was a vicious Bigfoot, they think, that is responsible for a couple of the disappearances. And it made me think of you because, a lot of people think these Bigfoot are they're just so nice and tame. But first of all, we haven't even established that they exist. So we sure as heck can't establish that they're all tame.
Well, unless you're calling me a liar, whatever I ran into, and my friend who was a medical doctor ran into. Well, if it isn't a Bigfoot, it certainly wasn't a bear. The only thing I could think about it was some guy who was close to 500 pounds, had long hair, kind of looked like a human, but not look like a human.
7-8 foot tall.
Yeah, and ran between 2 legs and 4 legs. So
my!
I don't think a human could do that, and I know a bear doesn't do that.
First of all, if you can find a 7-8 foot man that weighs 500 pounds that is pretty well fleet on the foot and gifted to go from 2 legs to 4 legs and back up without even a glinch in his stride, you've found a circus act, because that is amazing.
Well, I don't know what it is and what it was. All I know is it was something I don't ever want to see again. But, I don't want to really talk about Bigfoot. I want to talk about it because it's Halloween.
Okay, well, hey, I got to tell. Let me tell you something. Mirrors. I was thinking about mirrors. Mirrors, I got to tell you, if anybody's listening, stay away from used mirrors. Do not bring mirrors into your house unless they're brand new, because I'm going to tell you something. In my years, I buy and sell antiques, and mirrors are notoriously, I've had more problems with people having attachments onto the mirrors. They can open portals. There are just so many things that mirrors are just, they're a nightmare, Gary, a nightmare. And I've had to take them out of the house, exercise them, take them out of the house. And here's the problem. You can only get rid of them in 3 ways properly, and that's throw them in an ocean, or incinerate them at 2,800 degrees, or bury them in consecrated ground. So, I live in the Midwest, so I don't have an ocean. I don't have excess 2,800 degrees heat. So I've got to find consecrated ground. And let me tell you something, that's hard to do. I actually found a few out in the middle of nowhere, but then you come across the thing, if the law comes up on you, what are you going to say? I'm burying a haunted mirror in this cemetery. It's a lose-lose if you. It's just a lose-lose.
Well, what you do is you tell the cop, right, or the law authority, right? Look at it. And when he looks at it, he sees this bloody face, part bone showing, and the eye hanging out of the socket. That'll make him a believer that thing is possessed.
Oh, I'm telling you, in my 30 years, I have seen some stuff that mirrors can wreak havoc on people. Oh, Lord. They're awful. They're scary awful.
And don't break them up, because if you break them up, then you're just multiplying the problem, because let's say it's possessed with a demon or a
you're right. And then you got a spirit mad at you.
Or a witch, like my first wife. You could, break it in 100 pieces, and now all of a sudden you got 100 of them. And what are you going to do? Now, can you grind them up, though, in powder?
You're right, because you break them, that's even worse, because all you got to do is not find one little sliver of a piece, and may have that attachment still be on it, and you're still right back where you started from.
Oh, yeah. Now, I'm going to change the subject a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, there was this couple cases of this one place out in the middle of nowhere in Arizona where the truck drivers are making their long hauls late at night. And here it is like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and they see a figure ahead of them off the side of the road, or maybe even in their lane, walking. So they slow down, and it's a beautiful girl. And, and they stop and they talk, and the girl goes, well, I'm out here. My boyfriend, ditched me, and I'm trying to get back into town. So the girl gets into the cab. They're heading towards town, which is maybe about a half an hour ride. And they're talking back and forth the whole time. And then all of a sudden, he takes his eye off of her for 1 second, and then looks back on the passenger, seat in the cab, and she's gone.
Oh, boy.
And then he comes up to a stop, and he stops in front of this old cemetery. And he goes, wow. So he goes up to the local sheriff's office, and he goes, I don't know what happened. There was this girl walking down the road, like a half an hour ago. And she's kind of strange, though, because she was wearing clothes like maybe the 50s, early 60s type of clothing. And she was talking about her boyfriend ditched her out in the middle of nowhere. And the sheriff and the deputies all look at him. He goes, well, George, here's another one. And
another one?
Another one. And what was happening is that every night, at a certain time of night, on that same stretch of road, she'd be walking, and somebody would pick her up, and they would, converse back and forth in the car or truck, and all of a sudden disappear. And the girl gave her name. And that
she did?
Oh, yeah. And then the guy goes, yep, she's been in our cemetery since 1959. She was, found out on the stretch on road, whatever the road number was, laying off the side of the road.
Wow. There's a story like that similar where I live. This one actually, it still happens similar, but it's a taxi driver out in the Amish country. They pick somebody up and driving along, talking. Next thing you know, he's talking to nobody, and it just freaks them out. It happens routinely, but they don't have a name like that. But that's wherever that was, they've got it down. That's happened repeatedly, and that it makes it even more freaky. They know who it is.
Oh, I know. That'd be so scary. It would make me want to give up, being a truck driver. Or if it doesn't make me want to give up being the truck driver, I certainly would never, I don't care how good looking they are, would pick up a hitchhiker. Yeah. Because, and how do you know that if you pick up somebody out in the middle of nowhere, that you're not actually picking up a demon?
Who